Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, your host, and we have my co-host, Pascal Floor, on the other end. How's it going, Pascal?
That's fair enough.
Pascal,
fair enough that I'm now the co-host for this episode.
I haven't seen your lollipop lit up for a while.
Are we talking about the same lollipop?
Sorry, that really tickled me.
Yeah, I mean, you served it on a plate
on a platter. Yeah. For those not watching, Pascal has a nice little lollipop.
Oh, that lollipop! No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's more like an ice cream, isn't it?
I've got a great one as well. I haven't had. Well, I call those. Well, it depends. Yeah, I guess it could be an ice cream. Because it's colourful, it makes me think it's ice, true. And so it's like a lollipop. Anyway, I could do one because it's like I haven't had my lightsaber lit up.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh dear, I am a child.
Yeah, no.
The
thing is, whenever we are recording, it's kind of nice daylight coming into my room, and then putting on the lights, putting down the sheets, and all that kind of stuff. I always feel like I put myself into a closet then.
That's what I've just done.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like YouTube-ish kind of style, right? Yeah. Making everything dark, controlling the light, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's the Improvement Season podcast. It's just like us chatting about stuff. Right? We could easily also sit on a coffee table or so and then just chat there.
But I just told Pascal I've booked in someone, hopefully, to paint this room. So I bought the paint. The paint hasn't come yet, but I should get the paint. So it should start looking a bit better. But I've also been looking into sound panels and like where I need them. And it's like I need them like potentially on the ceiling and then to my right, to my left, and like in front of me, basically. So yeah I'm going to work on improving the sound as best as we can.
Yeah, but what you can do is actually you can have some kind of... So you don't need to just like have kind of that sound panel in front of you. You can actually make some kind of forms and stuff out of them to make it actually look pretty good on a wall. I
have gone down the lazy route. I don't know if you've heard of I haven't bought it yet, but I'm thinking I'm going to buy the Elgato, they're called, or something. Okay. It's a brand typically used for like streamers, live streamers.
Yeah. And it's like comes in the shape of like circles and stuff like that.
They're like, I don't know what, hexagons or something. They can be nicely patterned. They're very expensive compared to the cheaper ones, but I was like, that will look good in the office, and they're easy for me to just set up and put on the wall.
Yeah.
So I mean, there where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, this one is something that I've built myself, right? And there's kind of...
Oh, is that one?
Yeah, and here's sound panel behind it. So I made it. It took me a little bit longer, of course, right, to set things up. But this is actually very nice because it is now a beautifully looking wall. And at the same time, it's kind of soundproof. And right behind my monitors, I've like... There's a kind of cupboard, and on that cupboard, on the back of the cupboard, I put a sound panel as well. So it doesn't really look as beautiful, but you guys can't see it. So I think it's fair enough then.
This is what I have found is going to become like a bit of a hobby horse for me. I can see why we've spoken a few times, like where you've been on WhatsApp, leaving me a voice note. You're like, I'm going to B&Q or whatever, the hardware store.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I can see myself getting a little bit into it. I'm not as hands-on as you are. Like, I'll just go for the convenient option. But
the thing is, though, that I have no idea what I'm really doing. Like, honestly.
Oh, really?
that's. I would love to be able to have a little bit more knowledge about building stuff. I mean, just the pure basic things I can manage, right? And I know that there's lots of things on the web that can act like a tutorial for you. But for me personally, and that is a freaking fucked up thing that is also has always happened when it comes to doing things on a motorbike, I always am afraid to make a mistake that I then need to fix, or maybe a professional need to come to then fix it afterwards. And that is not the right mindset to have, because of course you will make some mistakes, but from those mistakes you will actually learn something. But there are plenty of things around the house, also in the garden, that I would like to build myself. But I just had here, right before the consultation, I had someone actually visiting me in order to build a garage for my motorbike in the garden, which will though also have like a small bench on it.
Nice.
All that kind of stuff, right? I could probably do it myself with proper planning, but I'm just too afraid of actually giving it a try.
It's like me with the painting. I've bought the paint, but I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to let someone else paint it because I'll probably do it wrong somewhere along the line.
I mean, just look at our generation. We can't even build something like that. And I had one of my athletes, man, he built it was crazy. He built an entire building himself, and he wasn't into construction work and stuff. And he has then showed me like videos, and he did it together with his father. Absolutely crazy. And that was very, very impressive. Just out of curiosity, and because he wanted to actually do this and make his hands dirty, so to speak. And I'm sitting here complaining about not being able to put something in the garden, and he basically built an entire building. It's crazy.
This is where I blame my dad, because he is exactly like me, terrible at DIY, never put in it. Not that I can't blame him, obviously, but it would be if he had been like on it, then I probably would be a little bit more on it. But he was very much like, get someone else to do it.
Thing is, though, do it yourself. Smooth transition into talking about training and nutrition. I mean, you're doing plenty of things for yourself in order to figure things out and building things already. So you don't want to build a house. The only house that you're building is your biceps, basically, and your entire physique, of course. And how are things going on that end?
Anyway, it's also a good transition to why coaching is so valuable, because
that's true,
you don't have the time, the knowledge to do it like we don't in those other services. We get people to come and do it for us because we know they're going to do a better job than we can.
Yep.
And we have the disposable income to be like, come on then, you do this because I'll probably not do it quite as well as you. And it's the same with coaching. Anyway.
I'm bringing up the disposable income because it's important for me. I could probably do it, right? But it would take time and also money. Maybe not as much money as paying someone to do it, but that time that I'm investing is probably much, much longer and worth so much more than the money that I'm paying to that individual, right? Because what it is that you always have to weigh it against is the time that you're then working or that you're not working, where you could actually then earn money. And that's kind of the exchange. You're becoming a professional in one field, and then it's just an exchange of goods. And the goods is knowledge. And that comes then with the cost of money, of course, or with the exchange of money.
I see it the same way as I've matured, and probably as I've earned a little bit more. I can buy more expensive, better quality things. And I realize whenever I went for the cheap option, it meant buying it at least twice, if not 3 times, if not 4 times. And I'm like, fuck, I should have just bought the more expensive one that has like a warranty of 15 years or something versus that. Sometimes you get lucky with cheap stuff, but very often, I think it's the same with coaching as well. Like if you invest in a poor quality a lower price coach, not always, but often they're not as invested in you. They don't give you the time, and they're maybe not as knowledgeable, and you're better off investing 6 months into a more expensive coach than a year into someone. And it's not always that way, and it's not always the way with goods, but often it can be.
It's funny because
do your research.
I just went through something like that myself. I still have left a couple of motorbikes at home, right? Which I wanted to actually then do some work on myself. But due to family, due to being self-employed, I rather spend the free time that I have right now with my family instead of renting or doing some renting on a motorbike. And that's why they just stood in my garage at the moment. That's why a friend of mine who is building those kind of things, I actually went to him with one of my motorbikes, with one of my projects, and said, like, do you want to finish it for me? And I already had a lot of equipment. And it turns out that lots of that equipment is just like utter rubbish or something that is illegal to be used here on German streets. And I wasn't aware of that because I was too ignorant. I didn't have the knowledge around it and about it. And now I'm spending basically money on new equipment that is more expensive because it also then has the requirements to be then legally driven in or on roads here in Germany. And I've already spent the money on the other equipment. So it's basically that. Due to my ignorance, I thought, no, that does the job. It's probably the same as that expensive equipment, just for a lower price. Maybe there is a little bit of a trade-off in terms of quality, but little did I know that there's a huge discrepancy in quality and that I can't even use it. And the same goes then when we're then transitioning or kind of trying to compare it to something like coaching. It's basically the same as well. The knowledge can be, or the coach can have a good fundamental knowledge about the principles of hypertrophy. But this is only one piece of the puzzle. That's why highly knowledgeable coaches are the ones who have probably experience in that field since like 20 years or so. Of course, not always is that the case, because people just experience doesn't really mean that you are then a good coach or so, but the chances increase that you are then becoming a good coach by then practicing what it is that you do.
And I think it's the same with products. If people are buying it and it seems really expensive, they get poor reviews, people don't buy it again, they don't refer other people to that product. Same with coaching. If a coach has decently high rates and they've had that for a long extended period of time, that's because they can, like, there's demand, and there's normally demand for a good reason versus a bad reason, and normally because it's actually worth it. So yeah, I think it's a nice analogy.
But yeah, once again, I don't blame people if they take a look or compare like two coaches and one is cheaper than the other, and on paper, well, the things that they are promoting on their website is basically the same. Like, I take care of my clients on a personal manner, individualized training protocols, which is kind of, in it for itself, if you really think about it, kind of a butchered term of individualized training protocols, because everyone is actually putting that into their bio when it comes to coaching, right? And to be honest, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people reporting that this is not the case, especially for the people who are then coaching like 100, 200 people at the same time, which just makes sense if you really think about it. But I don't want to butcher any kind of coaches, but to fall back to what I wanted to say, it's very, very hard to know for an individual what differentiates the coaches and their expertise and ability. Because on paper, from the outside, looks kind of the same. Maybe they both have some good transformation before and after pictures. So it's not easy, especially for the ones who don't have the knowledge, such as me with that equipment. For me, that equipment looked kind of basically the same. I saw that there was a different price tag on it, but I had no understanding about why they are so different.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's even the same with like clients. Like, you don't know who's going to be a good or poor client in some way. Just say like a poor client is someone who doesn't really check in, who doesn't really want to stick out the process, who's not really truly invested into coaching. And yeah, it's hard to differentiate between that. And the way we've kind of done it, at least on our end, is we very much upfront about what we offer, but we want to have that initial consultation. For us, that's imperative. And we see their time and our time is incredibly valuable. So we also have that small price tag on the consultation. So it's $19.99 for a consultation with us. And that ensures that we're going to turn up to the consultation and we don't, like, I don't know, book in a podcast or we have something else to do and we're just like, I'll just leave that for another time. And we also make sure that person feels heard and listened to, and like we invest into them because they put money towards it. But at the same time, they turn up. I know there's a lot of coaches listening who have had people book in consultations and that person never turns up, or they're just not truly invested. Whereas we kind of have that kind of I guess it's a hoop to jump before starting, kind of, yeah. So that we know that they are invested in coaching. They're willing to invest even into the consultation, which is really great. But yeah, it has it, and it's a kind of a barrier to entry, and we have that luxury now that we have that barrier. But it's certainly been helpful to us, and it's just some potential clients don't understand it. They kind of feel like they should have your time for free for some reason. I'm not sure why.
On that note as well, I know also that some people, if they had a bad experience with a coach in the past, it's easy for them to think that coaching is just that. So that coach, their experience with that coach is a representation of what coaching just in general looks like, which couldn't be further from the truth. But how should you know? So everyone who's now listening to that and can relate to that feeling of like, okay, I had a coach in the past, wasn't actually a great experience. Don't be too easy to judge that this is what actually coaching looks like. Maybe you just had a bad experience with that coach. Maybe it was kind of a, what was it called again? Kind of a rotten egg or so. What was it called again? Like, so, yeah. And maybe this is not really a representation of what it's like. It's the same as with everything else in life. We brought up a couple of examples already when it comes to the motorbikes. But, for example, when I go to the movies, to the cinema, right, and I watch a movie there, and I hate that movie, and I go home and be like, cinema is just shit. I never go to the cinema again. But it was just that one movie. It's not a representation of all of the movies that they stream or host in a cinema or so. It was just like a small marginal representation of all of the movies that are out there, right? And you only got kind of, maybe you were just unlucky with the pick because it looked great on the outside. You saw the trailer, you saw the poster, and it looked amazing. So you went in there, got your movie, and had a shitty experience. Right? And maybe next time you need to go out there and try it again with a different one.
Pascal, so that we leave the listeners with maybe some practical takeaways from this, what things would you suggest they look for when they're looking for like a coach for them that's going to suit them and their goals and needs?
Yeah. So first and foremost, go over to the Instagram, check out whether they actually have some chiseled abs and are very, very shredded and muscular.
This is coming. Are they pro?
Exactly. Have they been on stage? Have they won some shows? No, in all honesty, that is a very, very tough question to answer, to be at least for me, because what I'm looking, or what I would be looking in a coach may not be what others may look in for a coach. Each and every one has maybe some things that they want and need from a different person. So I know that a lot of people who come to us for coaching are looking for accountability as well, and also some guidance. But for others, it may be something like, I'm just looking for someone who takes care of my programming. And that is something that is very, very hard to figure out just by a social media presence or just by looking at their website or so. And the thing that I would say is actually go and sit down, have a chat with them. And of course, it would be helpful if you're then following that individual, but not every coach has like a social media presence or so. But following that person, maybe figure out what they stand for, who they are working with, and whether the vast majority of their demographic that they are working with is also kind of fitting who it is that you are, for example. Right? So just as an example, you would probably not go to a coach who's specialized in working with obese individuals if you are super lean, you're actually coming from an athletic background and you want to be a bodybuilder. All right, so figure out who it is that they are primarily working with and figure then out whether you guys are a good fit. And this is something that you can only figure out when you're actually having a chat with them. Well, what do you think, Steve?
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
It just made me think as you were talking me through this, I was like, what steps do we have on we have steps on our website, don't we, actually? Where we're like, step 1 is get to know Revive Stronger. We said like, learn about the brand, the coaches, the community, read our About Us section. So I guess getting an understanding of that person. So you hopefully have followed them for a while and you relate to them and you think they have like good knowledge and maybe even communicated with them. Like you've asked them some questions and maybe they've come back to you with some semi-decent answers and you've kind of had that kind of link up and you're like, yeah, they seem like a person I could get along with. Then we have step 2 is check our content. So like listen to our podcasts, check out our Facebook, our Instagram profiles. We said join our Facebook community so you can interact with us over there or interact with that individual basically. And then one important step, ask yourself if you're ready for a coach. I think some people think they're ready for coaching, but they actually don't really understand what coaching entails, which is where like that consultation comes in so we can explain what we require from them in terms of like actually being committed to reporting. Because like we always say, like if we have like a transformation photo, it's very much like, yeah, I guided this individual. They did the work. Like I couldn't guide them if they weren't good at communicating with me or able to communicate with me or willing to. And then we said that step 5 is like, if you're ready, let's book in for a consultation so we can have a chat. So I would say those are definitely some steps to take when you're looking at any coach, like actually get to learn what they're about, who they are, potentially check out some of their testimonials, maybe even chat. Like if they wanted to chat to some of our clients, like go ahead, like go chat to that individual. If we have a testimonial and we've linked them, go reach out to them, be like, how is it really working with this individual or whoever it is, you know? So you get a bit of an in-depth understanding of where they're coming from. And then, like you said, the really important thing I think is having that consultation. So important when they're taking control of your training and nutrition and you just kind of jump into it without ever having spoken to them one-on-one. Like that just feels, it's such a personal thing that if you don't have that opportunity, I just feel like there's so many dots and lines that could be crossed in the incorrect way.
One thing that I'm now about to say may be a little bit controversial for some people, but maybe I haven't really thought it through well enough. But I would also suggest that you are not working with your with the athlete that you're idolizing, because you're going in there pretty biased. You idolize them for their looks probably as an athlete, but that may make you blind for then their coaching abilities. So once again, you're not looking at it from an unbiased perspective. You want things to be true. You want things to be amazing. And you have the connotation that what they look like is a reflection of their coaching abilities, which is hardly ever the case. And you think that, or most of the time, people are actually then working with their, or wanting to work with their idol because they actually just want to have a connection to that person in some way or another because it's their idol, not because they think they are a great coach or they can help them to the best ability.
I think that's really important because, yeah, you don't know what's going on with that person and that individual and their unique situation and genetics or any of that stuff. So it's far more important to see how that coach is as a coach versus as an athlete and a competitor. I know it's important I think it is somewhat important to kind of walk the walk like we do, like we compete in everything and we show that we're interested and invested. And I think it's nice that clients can look up to their coach as you post some form videos on Instagram and your clients see it and they're like, oh yeah, my coach, awesome. I think that's great. But like the fact that they're a pro or whatever, like what have you, it's more important that they've got other clients to go pro or they've got results with other people and they have a selection and a range of people that really think that they are a great coach. Being a great athlete does not equal a great coach. There's many a great, from many different sports who have tried to become like a manager or whatever, a coach, and they're just not made for it because they don't go through the struggles the normal people go through because they are like elite. So I think that's really important what you said there. If you are idolizing someone as like just based off how they look, and that's why you want them as their coach because you're like, oh, they got their physique there, that means they can get my physique there. Don't go by that. But if they talk a lot of knowledge surrounding about how their journey got them there and they clearly have an understanding of what works for them, what might work for other people, they've helped other people do that, that's more of a respectable reason, but not just based off their physique alone. That's poor.
But the thing is then, if you still idolize them, can you be objective about their decision-making and your progress then? And I think it's becoming very, very challenging because you hold on to a belief of like, no, that person is kind of a perfect being. I know that not many people look at it from that perspective or see people such as being perfect. But if you are looking at your idol, then you may be blind for their imperfections. And those imperfections may then also be reflected in your coaching service. And if you're then blind to those things, it can be that you're then ignorant to reality and you're trying to convince yourself that what it is that you're doing right now, it must work. And you're completely convinced of that it is working, when in reality, you're actually not really making any kind of progress. You're not starting to doubt or question that coach or that individual because you put them on a pedestal. And it can't be true that they are kind of failing you, right? And that's why I think it's very, very important to have more of a disconnection from that. And I rather like to have someone who doesn't, I don't think that anyone is idolizing me, but I'm quite happy for that, because I think that could make it much harder for them. And also, when there's someone who is then waking up to reality, it comes like a true shock to them, because their worldview of you, maybe of some people, is kind of breaking apart.
It's a tricky one, because I absolutely understand where you're coming from, but something that I definitely want my clients to do, but I don't know if I want every client of every coach to do this always, is to trust me. Like, I want my clients to trust me, but I feel I should earn that trust. I don't feel like it's a given from the outset. And I say this virtually every single startup video that I have for clients. It's like, I hope that like you already have a good sense of trusting me because you've signed up and you've kind of followed me for a long time. You have an understanding of what we're doing. But I want to earn your trust. But by earning your trust, I don't want that mean that you can never doubt me. I want that so you feel confident enough to doubt me and to question things if things don't feel right to you. And a good coach will educate their client to know what should feel and what they shouldn't feel. A poor coach will say, just fucking do it and the results will come. You know, there might be a time and place for that, at very rare times and places for that. But for the most part, it should definitely be like a dynamic relationship, especially because most people who are going to benefit from online coaching, let's face it, they already have like some semi-decent understanding, they're intermediate to advanced. So they're not idiots. They have some knowledge base and they know themselves probably better than the coach will know them maybe ever. So it's important to be able to communicate with your coach and not feel like scared to ask questions. I think that's where it really becomes troublesome, where, like you said, they idolize them. So they just dare not question their coach because their coach is smarter than them and better than them in every way, shape or form. So whatever they're experiencing can't be right and the coach must be right. Yeah.
This is something that you see often in tribal cults or tribalism communities. It's kind of like a Ponzi scheme. You have like the top of the hierarchy. There's always like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals or so. And they are being kind of put on a very, very high pedestal. And they can't fail because the trust and belief in them is way too strong. However, when the entire thing starts to crumble, then shit is breaking loose, right? And everyone starts to kind of fight each other because they kind of held the entire construct together. But if then some of those imperfections shine through, the entire base is starting to crumble, right? And that is also never a good thing, to be honest. But yeah, with that then also being said, we are now talking kind of about coaching and all that kind of stuff. I think that, and we also talked about the demographic and stuff, right? I think when it comes to our services, many people either think we are only working with competitors and bodybuilders or don't work with competitors and bodybuilders at all. How do you see that? And where would you categorize us, Steve?
Yeah, so I think we work with, the majority of people we work with are coaches, actually. People who are just highly invested in this. They're eager to learn more. They want to expedite their progress, or they want confirmation that the things they've been thinking that are right, that they're doing, are right. They want to see the principles put into place and into a program, and they want to just learn more about it, and they're eager to learn. I think most people we help are eager to learn. We also have competitors, and if we do have competitors, typically they're first-time competitors because they see us as very knowledgeable and able to guide them down that path. They're the majority of people we work with, but I would say the thing that kind of aligns with them all is they're heavily invested and they're eager to learn about the process, and that they're interested in that coaching relationship where they do have that dynamic relationship, and it isn't like our way or the highway. And they want to learn from us. I think that's a lot of the people we coach.
So it's not specifically like, okay, it's only the bodybuilder, it's only the ones who are interested in getting lean or so, but it's kind of
also that a little bit.
It's more like someone who's just focused in trying to optimize something about their body composition while trying to learn more about maybe the principles, maybe themselves, or maybe even something like, I don't know, that they can carry over into their clients as well.
Yeah. Very often I find it's like personal trainers who are like, I've read all the books, I have an understanding of it, but I just truly don't know how to put it into practice. So they are like, what better way to learn than going through it myself with a coach that I trust in my corner? And also I find it's people who, because they're so interested in it, they're learning something new all the time. They're like, oh, Menno said I should do this. Mike Israel said this. Coach Kassem said this.
Mm-hmm.
And they change something in their program like every week. And so they truly don't know what's working. It's all just novel, and they're not kind of just progressing down one route. So quite often I think we save our clients from themselves to just pick one route. And then also I typically get guys quite often who are like adipose phobic. So they've gone through, they're kind of scared to gain body fat, just because that's a journey I've gone through. So they kind of relate to me on that regard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. More to add there.
No, I don't know. We kind of just ended up talking a bit about coaching, but
yeah,
ultimately I think people often, there's a few red flags of like the type of client we don't want. And I think people who do want coaching through us aren't the type that will like ask, like, how much does it cost? Like I understand why people come from that angle initially, but it's like you said, like you can't get a true understanding of the value of something like a service without talking through it with that individual. And I think just once you've had a consultation with one of our coaches, you'll see how they're asking questions. They're looking to learn about you. It isn't just like, oh yeah, we don't need a consultation. Just fill out this application form. I'll say if you're good or not. Of course, I'm going to say all of you are good because you'll then pay me and I'll send you a program.
Mm-hmm.
We're very much like get an understanding of them, what they're trying to achieve, where they've been, what their goals are. Cool. This is the sort of thing we'll probably look to do. They then sign up, fill out an application form. We'll build a program that's specific, individualized, truly individualized to them, and do a video overview and get their feedback before we even start. Because that process at the beginning, like once you get the foundation right, that's when everything builds and is better. But if you fuck up that foundation, which I think it is easy to, especially if you rush into like, I don't know, cheap coaching where it's like, I don't know, just like such a silly amount of money that it's like you can't expect true individualized caring coaching where you're going to have a true investment. So I think that's all I wanted to say on that.
On that note as well, I think that I would even go as far in saying that sometimes you don't even know the value of the coaching until you've tried it. In the sense of like sometimes even a consultation, you will not have a true understanding of what it can do to you. And sometimes it's just like jump into the water, give it a try, right? Because what do you really have to lose? Yeah, I mean, monetarily, you can lose a couple of pounds. It's not nice, that's for sure, but you will only come out with more knowledge, right? And I would be very surprised if you wouldn't learn anything at all during the coaching process, even if you're spending money. And even if it turns out or you are a little bit disappointed with the coaching service, you will probably come out having learned something. Because what I always like to say to each and every one of my athletes is you get as much out of the coaching as you're willing to put in. And that implies like you asking questions, and you being curious, you asking about certain rationales for then modifications and adjustments, right? And you get as much out as you're putting in. So you are basically deciding of how much it is and how much value you're getting out of the coaching. And if you do that and you're still disappointed, you still learned something. And you're coming out of it more knowledgeable in terms of like, all right, this coaching wasn't really for me. So it's kind of ending up being a win-win situation.
Yeah, I'd like to say every client that signs up with us, so long as they do what's required on their end, they're always going to leave more knowledgeable on something, no matter what. They'll have got something out of that period of time in that process. I'm very, very confident about that. But yeah, that's our coaching. Sign up via the link below.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a couple of questions here over on our Discord server. I don't know if people are aware of that. Kicking. Pardon?
It's alive and kicking.
Yeah, it is. So Zach has asked a question which I wanted to throw by you. So first one, it's actually the last one, but I will ask that first to you, Steve, which is kind of funny because you just like messaged me yesterday that you had kind of an idea of getting a tattoo done for your on your forearm. And before you actually sent me a message about this, Zach was asking in our Discord group, Steve, what tattoo would you like to have if you ever got a tattoo? And I was thinking when I was reading that, Steve will never get a tattoo. And just like a couple of hours later, you're sending me a message about considering getting a tattoo.
So yeah, I'm going to get one, and I want to get Vegeta on the inside of my forearm. So his head will basically be like just below the palm, and cool. His hair will then span and go across my forearm. Very cool. So that's the one I'm looking for. I'm thinking it's just going to be black and grey or like black and shaded, and just his head and hair probably Super Saiyan, but you wouldn't know because it's not yellow. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
And what arc?
What arc? So probably I haven't actually picked the design out.
Okay.
The face I'm thinking of, do you know It's Kashiro, Jackson Pios's clothing brand, and you know the Goku black with the Goku rose? That's like the look I'm going for, but with basic Vegeta's face.
Okay. So it's not like from a specific arc.
No.
Because the ones that I would definitely get is either the final Flash moment or the Majin Buu arc where he has like, or it's Majin Vegeta.
With the M.
Yeah. And he's kind of basically killing everyone in the stadium. That moment. Something like that, for example. Those two moments, like the final Flash moment and also then the Majin Buu or Majin Vegeta moment.
I want an evil looking Vegeta, that's for sure.
The what was it called again? I'm not following along with Dragon Ball Super anymore, but Ultra Ego, he looks actually pretty badass. Mean.
Yeah, right? Yeah. With the purple hair, the earring, fucking cool. So, yeah, and I love how he's different to the Ultra Instinct, where that's like dodging everything, whereas Ultra Ego is just like, just pummel the shit out of me. I just take hits, which is why I love, the idea of having Vegeta. I'm seriously like, I'm kind of nervous. Like, it makes me actually a bit like I get a bit of butterflies in my stomach when I see people getting tattoos. Like, not in real life, just literally like a video. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm a bit nervous around it. But I'm very excited.
All right, man. Like, honestly, don't worry about that on the forearm. Burns a little bit here on the wrist, but the rest, it's easy in comparison to other parts of your body.
What's your worst?
It was definitely the rib cage so far.
Ooh, yeah, I can see that being sensitive.
That's awful. And at some point, I'm going to get my neck tattooed, and I've heard horrendous things from people getting their neck tattooed.
And as Pascal will know, there's literally a tattoo parlor a 2-minute walk from our house. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's literally just there. And Pascal,
it's actually perfect, buddy. Honestly, that is the dream.
Yeah, so maybe I'll be covered in time to calm muddy this forearm, and then I'll slowly it'll creep over.
So Zach, there you go. You also had a question about my favorite tattoo, which honestly I don't really have. Simply because it's just part of me. It's weird, but if you've been tattooed for such a long time, you don't even notice that you are tattooed anymore. It's just like part of you. That being said, his actual original question was, let's wait and see. I would just read out the entire thing. Cool. As a theoretical question, would you rather have not an ideal nutritional protocol? You hit the macros and kcals, but it's almost all processed food, poor food choices, or not ideal sleep. You average 8 hours a week. So a night per week. But it's disproportionate day to day, and quality time is also variable.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Ooh, so he's basically saying what's going to have a bigger impact, like lower quality sleep or lower quality nutrition.
Yeah.
I probably would say the sleep. I probably think, and it depends how like processed we're talking about. If I'm getting any fruits or veggies, or like it's kind of like a bit up in the air, but I think probably worse sleep overall, so long as you're hitting your macros, like the nutrition is probably going to have less of an impact on your body composition than that poor sleep, I think. But I think probably a lot of people will be more likely to get it the other way around because they don't realize. I just think a lot of people don't realize actually how imperative like decent sleep.
Yeah, it could be. So yeah, for me, I'm a little bit more edging on the more extreme case than you. I would say quite convinced that it's actually that poor sleep will be so much more detrimental to your progress than less optimal nutrition. Because we can actually extrapolate that from something like if it fits your macros. As long, I think, if your caloric target is on point, you will still get some micros in. You will get still some vitamins in. Will it be great? No. But as long as you're hitting the macros, which he obviously is, I think that this will still yield results. Whereas when you are having not ideal sleep, for me personally, like sleep is non-negotiable, and there's kind of an abundance of scientific evidence already looking at that and showing how detrimental it is if you're only even slightly sleep deprived already, and if you're then having, or you're massively sleep deprived, things can probably already be pretty next or close to perfect on paper. You will probably not see that much of a progress overall.
With you talking it through 100%, like if you're hitting your macros, especially if you're managing to spread protein a little bit through the day, like you're gonna get a ton of physique progress with good quality sleep versus amazing nutrition but pretty shoddy sleep. You're gonna really hurt recovery there and growth and everything.
Yeah. It's even something that Menno covered in the last podcast episode where we had him on, right? He even talked about it. He even also there mentioned some studies once again as well, whereas even just like slight sleep deprivation had a major impact on your kind of hormonal environment and also physiological environment that is then kind of pretty detrimental to either muscle gain or fat loss, where it's like, okay, when you are pretty sleep deprived and a caloric deficit, your chances of losing muscle mass is exponentially increased, whereas then you're holding on to fat more stubbornly, and the other way around as well, where it's like when you are in a caloric surplus, for example, the amount of muscle protein synthesis or just like muscle gain is actually fairly low, whereas then fat accumulation is actually pretty high.
I want to give a quick shout out, just because it reminded me, to Greg Potter and Resilient Nutrition. Switch On is the product we talked about in the podcast a while ago, and it's now been released. So it's very exciting. Right. So people can use that as like instead of a coffee or as a pre-workout, and it has things in there like L-theanine, L-tyrosine, and some other bits and pieces that are basically, it's meant to be like, you know, you have a crappy night's sleep, so you end up having a bit more caffeine the next day, but then that has a knock-on effect and detrimental outcomes. It's kind of like, instead of having that, you have this, and then you sleep better. It doesn't have the same negative effects as other things. Actually, there's creatine in there as well, but Greg explains it in the podcast, so listen to that.
Sounds good. So
maybe, sorry, I was just going to say, maybe have the great nutrition, this, and shit sleep. No, I'm joking.
My only question is then, who does this in exchange for something like coffee?
Yeah, you do it in addition to. To be fair, it's like a hot chocolate flavor, but also it has 7 grams of fiber in it.
Oh,
and I was like, oh, I need to watch my Fibre today. Now I've had that, which is decent for like if you're dieting. It's quite a decent thing to have when you're dieting, particularly.
Have you, because you brought up the little protein pudding the last time, I think it was the last time, or maybe the time before that. Have you ever tried from Aldi their low-calorie ice cream?
I haven't had Aldi's, but I've had Lidl's.
Okay. The little one is not that great, to be honest. Oh. The one from Aldi is pretty good. It is actually coming very close to the Oppo ones.
Oh, nice.
Thing is, though, I had one of those, and I had a look at the Fibre. And the Fibre is so insanely high. I think it's like per ice cream, it's like 35 grams of fiber or so.
Holy moly!
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think that's the case with every one of their ice cream flavors, but the one that I looked at, because I didn't have that one before, I was just like taking a look at the package. It was there was the only one that was still available, and I'm not the biggest fan of something like salted caramel ice cream. Not the biggest fan, but I thought like, yeah, I'm going to give it a try. And then I had a look at the at the label, the nutritional label, and I then realized that just that salted caramel top had like 30, I think it's 34, 35 grams of fiber, which is crazy.
If I have them, I almost have to plan them in from a fiber perspective.
Yeah.
And I normally only have half a tub because I can't, my stomach is just going to be, like my fiber, because I track it, if I have one of those in the day, it'll get up to 60 grams of fiber in a day because my carbs are 500 plus and I'm still eating plenty of fruit and veg. So I've bought the like coffee and caramel one. I haven't tried it yet. I had the chocolate mint chocolate one from Lidl, and I like the Lidl chocolate chip one. It's much more kind of like macro and calorie friendly versus other ice creams. And at the moment, my appetite is still really good. So like,
for your budget, because having those ice creams from Oppo or from Halo Top, I haven't seen a Halo Top in such a long time. Are they broke? Are they not on the market anymore?
I think.
All right.
I think there's
because here in Germany, I haven't seen them in such a long time. Probably because the competitors were just too good. Yeah. Halo Top was just so shitty for such a long time. And then I think they picked it up, but it was already too late because the competitors were just too good. And now, like Lidl, Aldi have their ones out, which is like comes half of the price, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't had Halo Top in years now. I know I was like obsessed with it when it initially came over, and then I was like,
I think the last time I had it in 2019, actually. It must have been before the COVID crisis actually took in, because during that year we moved houses, and ever since I'm living in this house, I didn't have any kind of Halo Top. So, yeah, must have been like 2019 or so.
And this is something they sell, I think it's in Iceland. No, it might be Lidl. No, I think it's Iceland. They sell like, basically it's like soy meat, like no meat, soy, like chicken chunks. They're great. The texture's a bit so-so, but they're kind of like chicken. But the fiber is just, I'm just like, man, how do vegans do it? How do they hit their protein, high amount of carbs without just eating like just rice? Because my fiber just like, if I want to have bowls of oats, I want to have fruit, I want to have veggies, my fiber would just be like 100 grams if I was having all vegan sources of protein.
Have you never noticed though that when you have over a longer period of time higher fiber intake, the body is getting acclimated to that?
Maybe. I'm going to try it. I will slowly see if I can creep it, because I was at about 50. I slowly let it creep up to nearer to 60, and I'm feeling okay. So I'm going to see if I can slowly creep up and like truly find my limit. Because you know when you find your limit, because the next day you're like, oh, your stomach is not feeling great. Because
for me personally, it's always the same thing after a long cutting phase. I have digestive issues coming out of the diet phase, because then I'm reintroducing more carbohydrates. And this time, of course, as you may know, my increase in calories wasn't drastic or so. And still, I had like digestive issues for the first 2 to 3 weeks. It's not that it's crazy where I'm like shitting the entire time or so, or having massive discomfort. It's more like my stomach is grumbling a little bit more so, or my gut is grumbling a little bit more so. I can feel that I'm bloated. I can feel that gas is actually building up and my fiber isn't crazy or so. And then right now I can easily have like, I don't know, potatoes throughout the day, have an ice cream of those, having some vegetables without any kind of issues by the end of the day. If I had done this right after the cutting phase, holy shit, that, I mean, you heard about the explosion or the volcanic eruption in Tonga, right?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Holy shit, Steve! That was the strongest volcanic eruption ever recorded or measured.
Oh, I must have heard of it. I thought you meant like recently.
Yeah, it was recently.
Oh, it was recent. No,
it was like 2 weeks ago or so.
Okay. I'm terrible at this sort of stuff.
What I wanted to say with that is that's how you then can imagine you or me to feel like right after a cutting phase if I had eaten like ice cream, potatoes, and the amount of vegetables. That would have been like Tonga 2.0 right in Germany.
Oh dear. I think that's just a good point to like transition these things.
Yeah.
Transition into them. And I think a lot of vegans, like I've coached quite a number of vegans, I still do. And they report very similar to you where it's like, I see their fiber and it's like 100 grams. I'm like, do you feel all right on that? They're like, yeah. It's because they've kind of got used to it over time and their body can deal with it. Whereas if I've had clients who are on like 20 grams, if they went up to 100 grams, they would literally be the Tonga earthquake. That would not be fun.
No.
Do you have any other questions from Discord?
No, that was the only one.
have
the Discord channel is pretty quiet, to be honest.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But on Facebook, I 3 hours ago asked for questions, and we've got 2. I'm going to ask the first one because I think it's going to be very quick, and then we'll get into the next one. Because George Lavelle asked thoughts on Tomcat Alley and Fadogia.
What
and I
is
have fucking
that?
no idea what either of those are.
Never heard of it in my entire life. Tomcat Alley.
Yeah, I almost wanted to reply to him, and I'm like, are you trolling us? Because I have never heard of these things at all. And that's not a good sign for you, George, I don't think.
Is it like a place
in
the Harry Potter land?
He said he's been using them, so I'm assuming they're supplements.
It is a kind of a funny name, isn't it?
Tomcat Alley, yeah, and Fadogia.
I have no idea.
George. This is why I thought this would be quick, but I would highly recommend you check examine.com and see if either of them are in there. And if they're not in there, then I'd be particularly like, whoa. Yeah. So next question is from Michelle Padovano. Do you think that some exercises, despite the huge demand and lower SFR, are still mandatory for novice/intermediate lifters? Conventional deadlifts, back squats, bench press, overhead press. Thank you, guys.
No. So first and foremost, I think no exercise is mandatory. I think that you can, if you have that perspective of an exercise, I still think that there's lots to learn in terms of experience. I'm just coming from this perspective because I was there myself in the past. I thought that there is something special about those movements and I have to keep them in. And then once I detach myself from them, because there's no reason to be emotionally attached to exercises. Once I've detached myself from them, I was able to move on to other exercises. I was actually kind of making better progress, more progress with less fatigue and with less injuries as well. And I know where this is coming from because I think that when you're getting coming into the lifting or into the fitness industry, you're most of the time confronted with something like starting strength. And so this is still the common place where people are actually then introduced to lifting. And when you hear that over and over again, that those exercises are building the foundation and all that kind of stuff, I think that you put them also on a pedestal and value them much higher than it's, I think, justified, in my opinion. Are they great exercises? Yes, if you look at them in a vacuum, but for hypertrophic specific purposes, I think that they are always better exercises. Always, in my opinion. Hardly ever is like a normal back squat, a normal conventional deadlift, a normal bench press, the best exercise for an individual. And I could always make an argument of like, all right, what about XYZ? Or what about exercise X? Why do you think that a bench press is better than, let's just say, a machine press or so? Or I don't know, even something like a dumbbell press or so. There are always, of course, pros and cons to an exercise, but speaking about them in terms of mandatory exercise, I don't think that there is. I think it's more about like having categories of exercises of like, okay, you want to have a deep knee flexion movement in there. You want to have some kind of a horizontal press maybe in there as well. But what this looks like is then dependent on what is best for you and the things that you want to get out of a specific movement, a session, and also your program. If your goal is, of course, to be a powerlifter, sure, then these are mandatory exercises. But if your goal is just to build as much muscle mass as possible, and you have plenty of time in the gym, you can go like 5 to 6 times per week. I think that they are becoming less and less important, and there are better options out there. What do you think, Steve?
Absolutely agree. I think your answer there is essentially not only are they not mandatory, they may even be, and when we think rationally, and there are no limitations put on us or no specific reasons why we have to choose certain lifts, they may actually be detrimental or worse alternatives to other lifts. Because if it's got a lower SFR, then it's officially less efficient for the goal and outcome for the bodybuilder who should be filling up as much of their program with high SFR movements to build as much muscle as possible, because every bit of fatigue has a cost, and so we want to make sure that the trade-off between stimulus and fatigue is in our favor for muscle growth. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And I know where it's coming from, because I think we have these deep-seated beliefs as bodybuilders, and I still see it today with some maybe quite advanced individuals who see like, oh, this person has a huge bench press, and so clearly, and they have a massive chest, so clearly correlation is causation. For me, I must also do that. It's like, but you are not them. If they have a massive chest and you've been struggling to get a big chest, there's probably something genetic in there and something along those lines, versus like it may be completely the wrong exercise for you. It might be the worst choice you can make. You can't just be like, oh, all the big guys have big chests and they like barbell bench press a lot. It's like, well, but you are not them. And that's why that probably won't work just going through that. So yeah, you have to individualize your SFRs.
And when we just take a look at it from a pragmatic perspective, we would be saying that doing or going through the same kind of movement pattern, that one is better than the other, that means that there must be something special about that exercise. But just very much pragmatically speaking, from a biomechanic perspective, you may be going through the same range of motion, you're going through the same movement pattern, but maybe in a way where there's less demand on something like the balancing aspect or so. Would you then say that the only difference between a movement like this is when it's just like, from a very simplistic way of looking at it, the only difference is kind of the balancing aspect, that the balancing aspect has such a superior effect on hypertrophy that this is then the reason why we are growing? Because that would probably result in that, in our conclusion, right? And that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, for example, right, when you're having something like a bench press, why should a bench press, when you're going through that, you're lying on a bench, you're unracking it, you're leading it to the chest, you're coming up again. If your technique and execution is appropriate, it possibly and probably is always looking the same. If you're then doing kind of the same movement pattern on a machine, what's the difference behind it? There isn't really, right? one comes also here, once again, it's a free weight movement, and the other isn't. So from a hypertrophic perspective, we can't really say that one is highly superior than the other in terms of hypertrophy. So just like detaching ourselves emotionally from that, and just like looking at it from as much of an objective perspective as possible will help us just detaching ourselves emotionally from those movements as well, and thinking that they have something special about them.
I think it's like, I don't know, an example, you could analogize it quite quickly to like nutrition. Like someone's having, I don't know, rice flour, or they're like having their cream of rice, which is a really popular bodybuilding food. For like, I can see why it is. There's nothing inherently special about that. You could have some white bread and it's fulfilling, or some Cocoa Pops or something along those lines, and it's fulfilling a very, very similar role nutritionally. There are minimal differences. So if one of them you digest better, you prefer it, or you want to switch between them now and then, the body doesn't fucking know. It just knows what stimulus it's receiving, because they're so ultimately incredibly similar. So I think that's very well said.
Yeah, cool. So we're coming up on time. We have one more question left, but let's just save it then for the next time from Wendy. Sorry for that, Wendy. And yeah, so Steve, do you want to say goodbye here this time around?
Yeah, guys, thank you very much for listening. If you've made it this far, comment below. Well, what should they comment? Volcano? Yeah, I just saw someone do this in a video. Apparently it's a common thing where they ask the listeners to like comment a word below. So I'm just going to go volcano. So if you've made it this far, comment that below. And we appreciate you. As always, please do subscribe, share it, do all the YouTube things, all the Spotify things, rate us out of 5, that good stuff. And tonight, Book of Boba Fett is on, so I'm extremely excited. I don't know why. I just thought I'd leave that note in there for you guys. So
I mean, you're probably as excited for that as I am for always the new episode coming out from Attack on Titans at the moment. And yeah, so I can relate to that feeling, at least to some extent.
Every Wednesday, it's my Star Wars mug. My stories are covered with music from
I even received, because obviously I'm in our Revive Stronger YouTube account at times as well. And when I hit on a video to watch here today, I was just at the beginning of the video bombarded with like ads about Star Wars games and all that kind of stuff.
Amazing. I actually normally try and not use that account. I normally try and use my other private one.
Jess does.
Sometimes I mess it up.
Jess uses our account. I know exactly what Jess is planning. She's planning a trip and kind of turning a van into like a house as well.
Amazing. That's so good. Jess never listens to these either, so that's great. People might comment below calling us out though. Guys, cool. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Steve. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey.
Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.